And once again, I want to say greetings to each and every one of you, Aquaba. And Aquaba, that's welcome in Ghanaian language. Tree. Welcome to another round of Cultural Conscious Communications here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, livinginblack.com. It's Friday, and Friday is the time we set aside to deal with Show Me the Money. Today's date is Friday, the 27th of June, the year 2025 in the Western calendar. This corresponds to year 6265 in the Kemetic calendar, to which we realigned our cultural clock. Welcome to the seventh millennium. You have found your family in a peaceful place here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, and on livinginblack.com. Show me the money. That's what we do around here on Fridays. And it is an honor to be with you today here on LIB Radio, LIB TV, here on livinginblack.com. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put my guest here on the stage. Give me a second. I have to put that there together. We are right. And let me welcome to the stage today, joining us from Jamaica. Dr. Steph is in the house. Aquaba, beloved, how are you today?
I'm feeling outstanding and happy to be here. How about yourself?
Oh boy, it's been a traumatic morning. I just got a new phone, and my old mobile phone was not taking calls. I could call out on it, but it was not receiving calls for the last month. So I've spent nearly all morning without resolving the problem on T-Mobile. I'm gonna give them another chance, but boy, I am so frustrated. But you look like you're in good spirits today. They're in Jamaica. Why the guana Jamaica, man?
I know. In fact, I think I owe you guys, I guess I should have done it before I came on, a true background. Anyway, I'll do that next time. But yes, I'm at the beautiful Zimbali Retreats, which is up in
Mm-hmm.
the Canaan Mountains. Of there, it's about 20 minutes, 30 minutes from the grill. And just the perfect, it's a over 14 and a half acre organic farm, and just abundance of goodness and
Mm-hmm.
and beauty and wellness. So it's a fabulous place to be connecting with you all from. But definitely inspired me to think about both our last conversation and the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity for today's conversation. So yes, excited to be here, and sorry about the tech difficulties, because we get them here and there, but
Mm-hmm.
sure, they will pass. They too will
Yeah,
pass.
they too will pass, no doubt. Let me introduce today's show to our listening audience. Today on LB Radio, Fridays are dedicated to the theme of Show Me the Money with Dr. Steph. We will have a dialogue about the practicality of the Kuji villages based upon the book that I wrote. When it comes to the economic fate of doing nothing different to seize our destiny, we demonstrate just how practical this plan is unfolding. However, this plan does require all of us to cooperate and collaborate. Will you be with us? Dr. Steph, let's go into this topic of the Ghana Kujichagulia villages, which you probably aware I've been doing a lot of work on, but I want to hear your perspective of what you think about this.
Well, I'm a real estate developer. So, what I know is that any person that comes up with a vision for a development, uh, one or two things happens. Either they have the expertise to develop the project, or they need to bring on their team a developer who knows how to develop their project. From our last conversation, what I know is when someone has a vision, uh, and they need to understand what are the technical and mechanical requirements to bring that development vision to life. there are steps that are the same steps, whether it's, anywhere, it doesn't matter where you're developing. What's important is defining what you'd like to develop and then identifying where that development makes sense and how that development comes into existence. And so I say the vision is first built upon, they say, the originator that sees something. You see something in your mind that you've not only conceptually designed, you've given a name to it, and then you've defined some of the uses. What is the program for this development? What type of uses will take place? And then the third part of that is, who are the users? Who are the benefactors of this particular development? That's the community, the stakeholders who will be part of that development. And so that kind of helps to shape its initial vision.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have the loose structures of an initial vision, then you begin to determine where you'd like to bring this vision to life. And in our conversations, I understand that you want to bring this to life in Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
And
I got
so
a
if you've already begun to identify the sites,
no, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry,
Finish your statement.
I heard
Mm-hmm.
you.
No,
I'm going
finish
to
your
give a
statement
pause.
and
I
then
don't
I'll
know
put
if
it in.
we're having a little bit of a delayed
Yeah, I
communication.
think there is a delay. I was just going to say, I got a call from
Are you
our
able to hear me,
partner.
Kitty?
Yes, I can. I hope you can hear me. Testing one, two, three. Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. I hear
Okay.
you.
Yeah, I think there may be a long delay, maybe 10 seconds. I did get a call from our partner in Ghana, and he says, I have 500 acres. He's willing to offer this 500 acres to us. I think we would best do a land lease deal, probably for 49-year lease on that land. But that's not bad. It's a good start, would you say?
So, 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 just to give you the appropriate, when you're going to build on leased land, the terms are in 99-year increments because you're talking about housing people's permanent residences that are being built on a leased land. So you wouldn't do a 49-year lease, you would start with a 99-year lease for the portion of the land that's going to be built upon.
I think I do agree
Does
with
that make
you, but
does that make
yeah,
sense?
I do agree with you. But I do believe that about 7 or 8 years ago, and I would have to double check this, obviously, Ghana changed that from 99 years to 49 years. But it's not going to be difficult.
Okay.
As you know, Ghana has this
So,
welcome home policy for us in the diaspora.
right. But the reason that the term of the land lease is important is it influences what physical structures can be built on top of that land. And when you think about the age of the average building, you don't want to lose your house in 49 years, right? So there is, if you're not buying the land that the properties are going to be built on, that's like, think of the context in the US. If you're living in a mobile home park, you're always living on leased land. So you have your mobile home on top of that property. But if it's a short term lease, the presumption is that mobile house can be moved, right? In this case, if you're not building mobile structures, then you're building permanent structures. And so you want to build them in a context of who can purchase them and therefore be able to finance them. And that's why the 99-year lease term comes into play, for that portion of the land, because they want to be able to finance those properties. Otherwise, the value of those properties that you're planning can't be financed as easily. And so that becomes the challenge. And so you want to think about the things in the front end before you start trying to develop it, because how you make that land deal, this is what, again, most, if you haven't done a development from ground up before, your land deal determines the success of your project. And if you don't do the land deal correctly, the project will never recover from that mistake. So that's the first thing that you must get absolutely correct. So once you look at a site, maybe you don't want to, 500 acres is a huge undertaking. So perhaps you would take a portion that you'd have allocated for this development based upon that initial sphere of influence in terms of what you believe that you can not only develop, finance the development for, but also have a community interested in using that particular development. And when you put together a development that includes a village, that includes commercial, as well as residential uses, and depending upon how you've imagined, like if I look at your conceptual plan, that shows me that you have um, multifamily or higher density type uses. So that means either condos, townhomes, single family homes are typically built on their own independent parcels of land that's subdivided, usually for ownership. But again, if it's not subdivided for ownership, then it's a community that's built with, if you will, a homeowners association because the land itself is through a lease deal that the developer ended up agreeing to. So the homeowners will, even though they can pay for their property, will always have a payment that goes towards the lease of the land throughout the duration of their ownership. So
Okay.
they will never pay it off, right? Okay.
hmm Okay, I'm looking here at a website from Ghana, and it says the full years that land can be leased to you, that is us, is nine, or that's anyone, is 99 years in Ghana, citizens, and 50 years for foreigners. So we will be literally a mix of indigenous and foreign. I know the person who owns the land right now is a citizen, and so it'll be easy to work out. And it talks about what happens when the land lease expires in Ghana. After the lease expires, the land will be reverted to the person that sold it to you, although you can renew it again.
Absolutely, and that's what you want to do. And so, what's the incentive for the landowner is 99 years ensures that multiple generations of their family continues to have sustainable wealth. And so, this is a model that I encourage. Because it gives everybody longevity. If you buy the land, obviously it's easier for you as the developer because you own the land out and then you sell that off to your purchasers who buy the assets that you make available. But when you structure a land lease, to me, this is where we talk about building sustainable wealth within the family. So I advocate for these types of relationships because I think they're win-win relationships. They put their land, the portion of the land that's going to be leased, in a family trust, and it has options for renewal in 99-year increments. And then that family knows that they've taken care of multiple generations of their family with a sustainable income stream, to their family trust. And that too creates the security for the owners of those assets that are acquired on top of that land that's being leased. And so it's a real beautiful relationship, I think, for
hmm
everyone involved. So it's an exciting path forward. So, yes, yes, that's exactly what you're looking at. So now that you have the land and you say, all right, for our first development, maybe let's start with 10 acres, right? It doesn't have to be 10 acres. I'm just using that as an example, just saying that we're going to begin with a 10-acre site. That's a pretty large site because you're talking about uh, what is the status, the current status of the land? Are there infrastructure in place, or is it necessary to bring in all of the infrastructure and requirements in order to develop the sites? So you might look at where are my nearest access to resources, water resources, potential electricity resources, potential road and infrastructure. So you want to get also from the area that you're focusing on a topography so that you can understand the articulation of the land. This is where you begin to form your development team. And your development team consists of uh, different types of engineers, your geotechnical engineer, your civil engineer. Eventually, you're going to have your MEPs, your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers as you begin to get to actual developed, buildable plans. But the first version of understanding your site and what your site requires begins with first a preliminary development plan. So typically, when I come in as a developer for hire, I bring in the initial team and we assess the site, understanding the overall vision and concept plans to begin to bring a reality of what real plans would require and what the boilerplate costs are, because those costs you want to have some idea of again before you negotiate the land lease. Because again, remember, you can't effectively negotiate any of the land part without understanding that influence on the overall project cost. And then also the remaining amount of that cost, how that then influence the asset cost. So all of these things, go together in your planning. So you put together this initial team and you began to investigate, again, what type of soil are we working with? What type of structures are we considering? If you're considering, again, in your illustration, those are higher density multi-story assets. So then that begins to describe how far in the foundation we must establish the foundational structure. So then we need to know things like, is there a water table? How high is that water table? How far we can dig to support those structures? What type of infrastructure needs to be installed below grade? And where those various not only utilities, but other infrastructure began to fit the footings and all of those things to hold the buildings that you want to build, right? So the higher the structure, the deeper the foundation is required. So that's where our structural engineers, our geotech, providing us with the soils report so we know what the soil conditions are and what other uh, requirements if we have a soft soil, how we mitigate the soft soil to make it more stable for the development. You don't want to build something and then suddenly have it sink into the surface, swallowed up by the surface because it's too much. So all of those things are part of really getting into, a plan, right? And so that first phase, just to kind of give you a context, I said, hey, if you wanted to, for example, it's probably about a $250,000 investment for phase one to get that preliminary plan. And what that preliminary plan allows you to do is to begin to determine the feasibility of your project, but also how it is you begin to finance the rest of that project, right? You need to understand what the overall cost of the developments are and what the cost of the team and things of that nature are that would be required.
Okay, sounds good. If you don't mind, can we take just a minute here and take a little tour of what our Kuji villages will be looking like? These are artificial intelligence renderings. And if you don't mind, can we do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. This is, we're looking right now at the rendering of village life. What we're seeing right here, and let me make this a little bit larger for myself so I can see it. What we're seeing here is the village from a drone view, you would say. Now, this is not the central part of the village, but this would be like, say, an upper class part of the village. We are designing the homes based upon traditional African cultural architecture. And so, therefore, round houses with thatched roofs will be critically necessary. They are, of course, surrounded by gardens. Africans always surround their villages and their houses with gardens. We are incorporating renewable energy as a foundation of the village. And I guess that's a good place to start to talk about what is the practicality of using renewable energy in a village.
Great question. The practicality is very high. Again, it's about understanding not only the factors contributing to renewable energy, it's how the not only the irrigation systems, the waste systems, the electricity systems, all of the systems are designed will come into play. Based upon how they need to function and connect. So, on a very, we say at the 100,000 level view, yes, we know that there are ways to bring solar, ways to design the irrigation systems. I'll give you an example. One of the developments that I completed in Los Angeles, a lot of people may be familiar with it, anybody in LA. If you've ever gone to the Grove at Farmers Marketplace, across the street from the Grove is a project called Palazzo, and there's a Palazzo East. And then there's the villas at Park La Brea. Those are all my projects. There's also the old Centinela Drive-In Theater. That was my first project that I finished when I joined a company where I was director of development. And then I had a portfolio of projects throughout LA. But Palazzos, all of the Palazzos, those were ground up developments. So I remember when I first began those projects there, it was, we're building from ground up, so we had to come from underground. And I remember, of course, being the only executive female on that job site, uh, going through what was going to be the garage once we began that part of the infrastructure and coming out. And then I had to oversee the improvements along 3rd Street and 6th Street in particular, but 3rd Street between La Brea and Fairfax. Signal improvements, street widening, pedestrian. When Caruso began developing the Grove, we were developing our project, so we had to share which sides of the sidewalk we could shut down and allow
Mhm.
pedestrian access and all of those things. So again, it was first about understanding what resources were available to support and sustain. But what was unique about the Park La Brea projects was that there was methane gas that was is known to exist in that area. And so, in order for us to develop our projects, we had to solve, years before, there had been an explosion at the Kmart because of a methane gas leak. And
Mm.
so, we hired our engineer to specifically design the infrastructure so that we could build and secure our building from methane gas leaks. And that became the standard for that type of development in Los Angeles. That's how far ahead of the curve we had to be with our solution. And in that, not only did we design how we would mitigate, we designed basically, if you will, like a bubble that our buildings set within to mitigate methane gas leaks. But we also had to design different venting systems, and we also had to design our irrigation system. So again, looking at all of these different infrastructures and how they intersect is where you begin when you start talking about Yes, how will I power? How will I, you know, deal with waste? How will I deal with, making sure that we have sustainable access to, potable water in a particular community? So all of those things are practical, but they also will influence the ultimate design. That's why, although AI can give you a beautiful image, that doesn't mean that that is a buildable plan. So the
Mm-hmm.
plan will be adjusted according to those true building needs where it has to be, in order to make those things happen. So some of those
Oh.
round buildings that maybe didn't have internal infrastructure, you went out to an outhouse. You have to consider, we want modern conveniences with, maybe a historical form. And it doesn't mean that it can't. In many cases, I won't say can't that it can't be done. It can. It comes down to the cost to do it. Does it make it an end product that someone can afford to pay for? Or does it
Mm-hmm.
cause the project to no longer pencil, be financeable? So those are the
Yeah.
things that come to play once you start understanding the real cost for your idea.
Mm-hmm. There's another image I will show you here of the insides because we do intend for our traditional African roundhouse design to actually have all of the accoutrements of modern living. Now, let me find this particular image. There, this is the image right here. This is an artistic rendering, of course, needs to be put to engineers to actually execute it of a roundhouse design that we intend to build as part of our Kuji villages.
Excellent. Well, believe it or not, I remember when I was a young person, a teenager, one of my cousins is an architect. And I remember telling him that I wanted him to design for me a round 5-story glass house. And he's laughed and he says, well, maybe by the time you're old enough to afford it, the zoning will allow for that type of structure to be built. There was no allowance for a structure of that magnitude, to be built at the time. I can tell you that I have lived long enough to see similar iterations of that structure. So clearly, I've lived long enough for the zoning to allow someone to design a circular structure. So there's models out there, and so you can begin to find actual models. And what I would say to you is to look for the examples that have been built and began to understand which architects and structural engineers participated on the building as well as the MEPs, the whole design team, because they will have had to have customized systems to work in a circular structure. And also
Mm-hmm.
make sure that, again, your vision is being shared by those who are paying for it. Because I see right now there's a project here in Jamaica that was built using geodesic zones,
Mm-hmm.
and the person had a very unique vision about these domes and went on and developed these domes according to, of course, their vision. And that's fine when you're using your money. The problem is now he wants to sell and they're not interested buyers because there's not a market who share his passion for a home that's structured in that manner, because there are some limitations, because you
Mm.
have to support a round structure in a different way than you would support a more rectangular or square structure, right? And so there are trade-offs in how you use the interior space because of those compromises that you have to make in order to support the structure. Um, your furnishings, your refrigerator is not circle, it's square, so you have to create spaces, and you lose a lot of usable space, which again, it's okay if it's your choice, and it's okay if you know that you're paying for that. So if you know that part of what I'm paying for is going to cost me more because I have to have, these customized materials, but if I have enough demand, I'm doing enough units that all need these type of customizations, then I can get some efficiencies, um, and to the degree that that interest and demand continues, then maybe more. But you want to make sure when you're developing something that's so customized and so unique that you really do have end users who are willing to purchase it, because that's why most developments fail, is they believe that they are building something on spec and that somebody's going to be interested, but they didn't bother to find or establish that interest beforehand. And you've got to finance that. As the developer of this project, it is your responsibility to come up with the capital to get the project done.
Hmm. Now, are going to be using rammed earth as a method of building in there, but rammed earth updated to more modern specs. So the rammed earth will be combined with steel trusses, et cetera, et cetera. The one of the partners of this project has actually constructed a number of structures there in Ghana. And so we'll be bringing him in as well using the rammed earth technology. Let's just take a couple more look at a couple pictures here.
And has he
I
used that?
have,
Has he done that in Ghana?
yeah, not this particular building, no, but he
Perfect.
has built multiple homes for the partners are have experience in this. We showed you that. This is a idea that the Kuji Jagalia villages will take primary responsibility for preserving the inherent culture of Ghana, as opposed to our children being saturated by the poisons of Western media. We want to saturate our culture with African inheritance. Your thought?
I think that's excellent. So I think it's essential for us to take over educating our families and our communities as soon as we can. And we
Hmm.
need to uh, deal with not only the adults, but definitely the children. I remember, again, it's almost like I feel at times that I've lived this before, but I remember being about 7 or 8 years old and talking to my grandmother one day after watching the news, and something was happening, and I was always very sensitive to the news. And I remember walking away and telling my grandmother that I was going to fix it, I was going to change people's experiences, and that I had come up with the best way that I could do it is if I started educating the mothers while they were still with the babies in the womb, and that way I could at least educate two at a time. And that's how we would begin to alter the mindsets. Come to find out, that was actually, I guess, a forward thinking thought. I got an opportunity to test many of those ideals along my own experience raising my son. And I said his education began the second I knew I was with child, and began during his womb experience, which he likes to say the time that he was sharing my body. Um, but he was in school, and being able to um, control, supplement, and provide accurate historical education is really essential. I say, beginning with developing mindsets forged through understanding truth and discernment, and recognizing each person's inner gifts and being aligned with their God-given assignments is the foundational education that if we began, especially between 0 and 9, to ensure that our families had, that we'll see stronger families and communities emerge. So, yes, I think this type of shared, that's what happens in the US, whether people want to admit it or not. Propaganda is based upon a particular narrative that some folks have decided is the narrative that they want to put forth. And the narrative is to condition, in particular, Americans to be consumers. Because if you consume the various products that are being offered, then it ensures the owners of those companies that produce those products will have lifelong wealth, sustainable wealth, because all they have to do is produce the next version of their particular product and create a dependency on that product. So it's no wonder that the products and sectors that are dominated by the families that seem to have sustainable wealth are all of the products and services that you and I consume because they've become a necessity.
Mm. Next image, of course, the family is the center of everything in our Pan African values system. The children, Africa has more children per capita than anywhere else on the world. Africa is the youngest, African nations are the youngest nations on the planet. Um, what can we say about this? But yes, yes, yes,
Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes,
yes.
yes.
And another thing I love about this rendering is that we seeing the whole family living almost completely African in a very in a what would be considered a very upscale setting, but the African clothes, the jewelry, the woman's hairstyle, the girl's hairstyle, it's all authentic and representative. There's nothing anyone can say would surpass this. So why not do it?
Well, it's being done. I'm here in
That's
Jamaica.
right.
This is how
Mm-hmm.
families live. Jamaica's families create what they call is the yard, the family yard,
Mm-hmm.
right? And on the family yard, they will have parcels of land, acres of land, and each of the family members will develop their own property, sometimes on top of, sometimes adjacent to, but it's basically their community that
Mm-hmm.
houses their family. So the parents began the first part of the development, and then the kids began to develop within that same community. And they live and support, they have their garden again, um, they contribute to the raising and rearing of the children and providing that historical context and exposure to the cultural beliefs that the family holds. And so that's what you see, that's what I'm living here, and that's probably what makes Jamaica so magical for me, is to be able to experience what the beauty of a strong family can create when they collaborate and
That's
when
right.
you know for sure you have that foundation. So it is necessary. And not only is it necessary, it's historical. It's what the Maroons brought, it's what our legendary tribal families that led their kingdoms. It's the kingdom model for sustainability.
Mm-hmm. And we love it. Another image. This is another image of the village. In this particular image, this kind of shows what would be like an almost an appendage of the village. This is a cluster of about 10 homes. There is, looks like over in the corner, a sustainable bin for grain and other agricultural aggregation when we're harvesting these crops, they need to be aggregated in a manner that's dry and safe for them from fungus, etc. But this village, this appendage collects to a much larger area, and we're imagining this is probably about 5 acres or so we're seeing here. We're imagining creating this central hub, which would be the city of the village, but then these appendages where people can have a little bit more relaxed lifestyle. What do you see? What does it make you think of?
Oh, it makes me think of when I look back, there was an image that I received. I'm going to say when I was looking at something that gave me an image of um, one, I think they were tying it to Solomon, right? And how he led the kingdom. But then you saw these circular villages that were reflective of where the communities that he touched had been and how they were set up. And so if you looked at like a site plan of these villages, you would see just circles all around. And you could tell from the and necessary um,
Okay, we're
structure,
losing you.
not only
Okay,
for safety, not only for ease of circulation throughout the community, and it provides necessary for all of the utilities and everything to work, but this kind of circular concept for the communities to thrive.
okay, all right. See, unfortunately, we're are the in
Sorry, I
the
have to move.
audio.
The so much fun eating on me.
Unfortunately, the audio is getting really sketchy now. We're going to push through it
Can you hear
to the
me?
best of. I can hear you now. Yes. So, let's go to the next image.
Let's see if
This
I can
is
get, yeah, I moved in closer to, uh, yes, okay, perfect.
okay. I'm pushing up this image. Now, this might be considered a more the high end living, or it could be considered more density living, whereas European people and in Western society are creating these big, huge apartment buildings with sometimes hundreds of apartments in them. We as Africans, we have more available land. We're not so population dense as them. So therefore, if we're looking at a dense populated part of the village, this is what I imagine it would look like. Your thought? Okay, are we still with you, Doc?
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful illustration and it allows for great articulation. Let's see. Tell me if you can hear me now. Can you hear me
Yeah, I
now?
hear you. Yeah, you.
Let
I
me
hear
see
you.
if I'm better. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So yes, so when you're looking at the articulation of the higher density project is beautiful.
hmm I'm going to click on the next image. Also
Or
in
density.
yeah,
Okay.
across Africa, veneration of the elders is held to be amongst the highest regard. It's it's almost unquestionable. Western cultural influences are creeping in, but in Africa, it's far, far less damaging than it is in the West. What do you think about this image of the veneration of the elders? I call this image. Okay. Apparently, we've
Absolutely.
lost.
The importance of, yes, I'm here. I hope
Yeah, the delay is getting unbearable. Go ahead, make your
I
comment.
still hear you. No, I'm saying that it's interesting. I'm building, social impact initiatives here in Jamaica as well that specifically cater to both the seniors and the young people, the youth, because of the importance of that connection.
Hmm. And our village was originally designed to be able to accommodate seniors living in them through to the end of their life. Let's go to the next image. I think this one here,
Are
there
you
is.
able to hear me?
Not really. It goes dead for long times at this particular point. I'm going to go back. I think there were a couple more images from the first of this particular collection. This is, of course, Africa. I said it earlier. I'll repeat myself. Africa has the youngest nations in the world. Uganda and Niger are officially the youngest nations in the world, where half of the population is actually under 18 years old. So the villages, we have to design the villages to be intergenerational and ultimately for our children to grow up in the villages with their own education system, a number of technological systems serving their interests first. But ultimately, I think you would agree, we must do this for our children. All right. It doesn't look like Doc is hearing me anymore. You're back. I hear squeaking in the background.
Yeah, I realize where my signal is coming from. No, I had to go back close. I realized where my signal is coming from, so now I had to move closer to where
Yeah,
the signal is coming from. So hopefully that should solve it.
that is better. Yes.
Is there a stronger? Yeah,
N-
I feel like I'm at a stronger place now. I realize where the signal is coming from.
All right. It is a little sketchy there in Jamaica. We're going to do the best we can with what we got. Your comments on this image.
Okay, perfect.
All right. We're building this for the children. Your thoughts? All right. Looks like we're going to just move forward. Um, Part of the role of the villages is to bring our African high tech into play in the village life, in the community. Our village, we've planned on it having high speed internet access, but we want to integrate our village as a permaculture campus, not only dealing with biology, botany, but dealing with science of all levels. We, as African people, we need a place to certify our produce as organic. Many times right now, it's not being certified organic, and farmers are losing a percentage of the money that they should get. Your thoughts on the laboratories and African development? Okay, looks like we've lost our connection.
Absolutely. I mean, that's why I created my Organic Farmers Global Initiative to preserve and sustain domestically and globally, but also to be able to incorporate the farmers upstream in the market cycle to participate more fully in the products that are being produced using overall ecosystem that's necessary to conceptualize and develop those products and bring them to a marketplace. Just as an aside note, this is an example infrastructure development. They're laying fiber optics to handle the growth in the market. And for example, what you have are major communication between a satellite and two other wired solutions for my internet. But what you can see is even though your development has all of the tools that are offered in a community, because you don't control the entire infrastructure, you can't control the amount of power that you receive, especially in communities that are being, newly built, newly formed. And this is why it's so important to understand that, yeah, you can throw up your satellite, but if you're out isolated, how strong will that satellite be? And how wide of an area does that satellite have to support and cover? And what's the demand against that technology for it to effectively, distribute that power and respond to the demand? So, again, kind of an aside from your question about the organic farmers, but yes, I agree. Organic farmers in particular need to be protected and preserved and provided with sustainable solutions to continue to exist domestically as well as globally.
All right, we're going to go a couple more images. This is a rendering of the density of the urban gardens or the gardens serving the villages. Lots of tropical plants and fruit trees. Absolutely beautiful. And I think that takes us to the end of our presentation. Your comments, what do you see? Does this inspire you?
Oh, absolutely, because every community that I've ever developed, we've always had to address the landscaping and the open space requirements. And I've always said that it would be really great to see those spaces serve a dual purpose, and that is to
Hmm.
be a community garden and herbal gardens so that the users of those spaces could partake in fresh organic, be it teas, be it fruits and vegetables that they can use in their preparation. And what I can say is I have been able to experience firsthand in Jamaica. So I know it works. And I know that there's ways to build upon those models to expand. So yes, absolutely. It's how every community should be imagined, is a sustainable organic farm that the community is able to benefit from.
Hmm. This particular image, I thought I was out of images, there's a couple more. This particular is the idea of these Kuji villages being a distribution hub for traditional African medicine. Again, when we look at the global wellness economy and where it's expanding, we can see that the demand for traditional medicine, be Chinese medicine, Indian, Ayurveda, or traditional African medicine, is definitely a huge market and it is expanding. But traditional African medicine has a very insignificant slice of that very large market. So we aim to build on that. I have a friend in Kenya who's doing wonderfully with traditional African medicine, and we want to incorporate her into our development plans. This is the image of African women building a business selling traditional African herbs and medicines. Your thoughts?
Well, that leads into, my first, I have a series of treatment spas that are aimed at assisting with addiction recovery, brain impact, concussion, PTSD, and all of those recoveries. But the reason that I'm using ibogaine, which is an herb that originated from Central Africa. And our SOAR ibogaine spas our first one will open in November in Jamaica. And we have many locations slated. Currently for the FDA to allow clinical trials for ibogaine, which I think is great. It brings the awareness of the power of this particular plant. The downside is those pushing it will end up converting it to a pharmaceutical drug, and create a synthetic version rather than the organic plant version. At my clinics, at my spas, our goal is to have you deal with the original plant based herb and heal your body and not require any more drugs. No more drugs, no more poisons in
Yeah.
your system. You get to have your body healed. So definitely, I am a fan of these traditional plant based solutions. That is what our whole foundational premise for our holistic spas is wellness using non-invasive treatment protocols, as well as our various, tonics, teas, and tinctures assist you again, all from organic sources. So that if you're consuming something, it's something that came from its natural root and is not a synthetic version of. It is the actual plant based, raw, organic form of the herb, able to provide you with the outcome that the herb was designed to provide.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yes, our SOAR Ibogaine spas, our first one opens in November. And we look forward to introducing people to ibogaine, which is, as I mentioned, a herb derived from Central Africa. So yes, I'm definitely all for it.
Mm-hmm. I do see two comments in the chat section. Um, Shabaka is in the house. He says, "Greetings, Baba, Dr. Audrey, and family." And Unguvu has joined us. He writes, "Sawubona. I see your vision. I think you'll have to show why this design," he's talking about the housing, "is better than current designs, heating, cooling, building. An innovative design of conventional boxes may sell better." And well, I will definitely keep that in mind. And we're going to keep you posted as we go to develop this. I have one more image I think I'm going to show here before we wrap it up for today. And this image is, of course, the one we started out with, or this is another one similar to what we started out with. This is the Kuji Chagalia village viewed as having been developed, having been established for a number of years. And I imagine by 2050, we could and would and should be very well established, very comfortable with our own architectural designs, village designs. We aim to start in Ghana. That is going to be the first village. Then we're going to move on to Kenya, Uganda, and from there, we should be able to go ahead and expand to as many as 32 Kujichagulia villages, including Kujichagulia villages in certain diaspora locations. We're going to wrap it up soon. Doc, your comment on this vision.
Absolutely. Yeah, the first step in developing is to begin.
Hmm. We're going to wrap it up for right now. Let me go ahead and get this out of the way and let's just wrap it up. Hopefully, we will have inspired our listeners. At a certain point, I'm going to begin to have an ongoing conversation on Zoom. We're going to dedicate, I think, Friday nights, Friday evenings to only focus on the visions of Kujichagulia, escape, etc. As you obviously can tell, and maybe you're less aware of it because you are in Jamaica, but the world is kind of coming apart right now. Um, the recession is back. It is now. It's not official, I think, until it's 2 quarters in a row that the economy is receding. Black people are losing their jobs in horrendous numbers. The cost of housing, the cost of food continues to escalate month after month. Things are getting crazy around here. It is time, I suggest, to build a Noah's Ark and get us out of here. Your thoughts, and then after which we'll wrap for today. Your final thoughts.
That's why I'm in Jamaica. I started putting my plan together, probably almost 30 years ago, and really, really solidly. I think it was 25 years ago when I finally arrived here in Jamaica. And I've been putting pieces of the plan that is now manifested, on my side, the arc is finished. I'm
Hmm.
not starting to build it. I built it. It's finished. We will be announcing a series of grand openings to our various locations. But that's what I set out to do. And when it was time to come, because I had put together all the work that I could do remotely, it was time to get on the ground, boots on the ground, to finish up. I'm and I'm in the finishing up phase before we're ready to uh, reposition, redesign, and begin to accept our guests.
All
So
right.
yes, I am grateful that I have been led by Spirit, by the Almighty, believing that I'm on a
Okay.
particular
Unfortunately, Doc, the
assignment.
phone is breaking up so bad right now we can no longer follow
And I
you.
guess, 30 years ago, I was
Okay.
a little
So on
choppy
that,
today.
yeah, it's pretty bad. It's really bad. I'm questioning whether I'm even going to put this in the replay. It's unfortunate. Thank you, Doc Stephanie Argery. You do bring a lot of value to LIB Radio. Hopefully, 2 weeks from now, when we join you again, we'll get this streaming thing a little bit better. And until the next time, we wish you peace and prosperity there in Jamaica. Thank you for being with us. And on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. What you saw today here on LIB Radio and LIB TV was probably more than anyone else has seen other than myself. And there is a group of people that I am working with. We are really in need for participation from the community. This is a brilliant idea. I hope you do agree. But a brilliant idea can go nowhere if the people who are expected to participate in the idea don't contribute. And if the visionaries go under because the struggles of life are so great, I only ask one thing of you, our listening audience. Just buy the books. There is a book called Kuji Villages. And believe it or not, the book is very inexpensive. I want you to get the book because I believe that if you read the book, Kuji Villages, you will believe in the plan. You will believe in it, and therefore you will be able to contribute to it. So I'm going to put up the link. I'm going to put it up in the comment section at the end of today's, but you can get the book. And if you click on this link real quick, you'll get it. Can get the book. And it's at http://Kuji, KUJICHAGULIA, villages, VILLAGES.com. You can get the book. I highly encourage it. You can do what you want to do. I am absolutely convinced that you are going to do the right thing. Couple more comments. Google writes, Noah's Ark or Moses' Exodus both seem appropriate right now, and you're absolutely right. Of course, both of those are fictional, fictional, but ours is real. Brother and Google, we don't have to make up a story or appropriate anyone else's story. But Noah's Ark and Moses, we do know that those are fictional stories. I mean, even the people, well, I'm not even going to go into that right now. No need to waste time on being negative. But we can do this. But we got to believe in it. You and I and Guvu and everyone else out there listening has got to believe in the vision of Kuji Villages. And on that note, I want to thank you for tuning in today. Tell some other people to watch this video. And unfortunately, the audio was very, very bad today. And I don't have to apologize because it took place in Jamaica. And I've been to Jamaica before, and I understand exactly what Doc was going through. And I feel for her. We're going to always just do the best we can with what we got. We've got a lot. We've got a lot, people. So don't hesitate. Don't delay. Don't waste your time, my time, our time. Let's go forward. Let's build the Kuji Village. I want to thank you all for tuning in to LIB Radio, LIB TV, and livinginblack.com. This is your favorite. We aim to be your favorite. And we hope you find us to be a good contribution to everything that you are truly, truly, passionately committed towards. Peace and prosperity to each and every one of you.